Hey, so I just wanted to post this quick rambling video about where I think Ogres are at in AOS 3 before the impending fact comes, so we can have some context about what I'm going to say on Twitter and maybe on some other shows after the fact comes out. This video is going to be totally unedited. You can see my cupboard's open in the background. I just realized that. I'm pretty sure that's my underpants sinking out of the cupboard. And you'll see my door is also open in the background. But, you know, this is going to be an unfiltered video. That's just how we roll. So, here's some hot takes. Okay, so, where are Ogres at right now? Now, I think our win rate sits at about 45%, so that places us in, I think, comfortably the B tier. We're definitely not A tier. I don't feel like we're amongst the likes of, you know, what would be some classic A tiers. Like, you know, Slaves to Darkness, for example, with Archeon. I feel like that's a classic middle of A tier build, right? Loses to most S tier builds, beats most of the stuff below it. I think Ideneth Deepkin, same thing with the Sharks, right? Loses to a lot of the big bads, and, you know, if you watch the Honest Wargamer show, you can see they absolutely slap the shit out of anything in the bottom tier, okay? So Ogre's probably like B tier. I think we have a lot of good games with the A tier stuff, but the real weakness in Ogres, and the stats, again, show this, is that we have no chance against the S tier armies. Our win rate against Lumineth Realm Lords is something in the 20%, and, you know, Gargants is similar as well, from what I recall, and that means that if you rock up to a game versus Gargants and Lumineth, you've got like a 1 in 5 chance of winning. So if we're going to live that out in priority rolls, you probably have to win all of them, right? So that's a difficult prospect. A lot has to go right for you to win. And I think also, you know, the thing to consider in AOS 3, right, is that, now, I don't think it's higher skill cap than AOS 2. I actually think it's lower skill cap. But, okay, and this is the important thing, right? This is the really important thing. The barrier of entry in terms of the rules is really high. So what happens is, like, you can be really bad at AOS 3, but if you just work at it a little bit, then you can be good. And then at that good level, the distance between good and very good, it's not as big as it used to be. So, huge barrier of entry, but then once you actually learn the rules and master them, the difference in skill between players is not expressed that much in the game. That's the thinking where I'm at the moment. So, the reasons for that, I think, is numerous, but, you know, namely, I think a lot of the top builds, so I'm thinking Gargants and Lumineth, I don't care what anyone says to me, Lumineth is not a high skill cap army, okay? Now, it is, on paper, but 30 Sentinels is not hard to play with, okay? You can learn the book in the day and play it, and you're not going to play it to the best, but you will still stomp everything that relies on hero synergies, okay? 30 Sentinels is not a hard army to play, okay? Now, all the various builds involving Teclis and Foxes and stuff, all the rest of the build is difficult to play with, right? It's hard to use Teclis properly to its maximum, particularly in S tier matchups, right? And it's hard to use the Foxes to the maximum, again, especially in S tier matchups, right? But using the 30 Sentinels, which is fundamentally how you win games, it's not hard to win with, okay? That's where I'm at with Lumineth. Gargants, we obviously know, smooth brain, move ahead. You know, I see people play Gargants wrong all the time, though. I actually think it's just as hard to play as Lumineth, which is not that hard, but still, you know, there's some play with Gargants that people, again, into the S tier matchups require some thought. But the thing with Lumineth and Gargants, okay, which sets them apart from Ogre MAWTRIBES, is that they will stomp pretty much everything below them. Right, so everything that's not in that top tier and the upper middle tier will just get destroyed by Lumineth Gargants, okay? And the stats, again, live that out. Now, where Ogres are at is we're kind of in this being stomped position, okay? So, again, we have competitive games with a lot of armies, but against those top armies, it's like you rock up to the table and it just doesn't feel like you can do that much. I think Unleash Hell for Ogres in particular has just pushed it to the level of, like, you know, when I first, you know, did an interview with Honest Wargamer about Ogres in 3rd edition, I actually sort of, if you watch the whole video, I actually never said what I thought about where Ogres would be. But at that time, I was thinking, Stonehorns, compared to other monsters in the game, look pretty crap right now. Now, the reason why I thought that was if we cast our eyes back to Ethereal Amulet, right? Do you guys remember that? So you could have an Ethereal Amulet Stonehorn, 3-up save, couldn't be modified. Right, this is in a time where you could use reroll 1s to save, so you could be perma 3s, rerolling 1s to save. Now, command points are pretty rare, but then you could take Winter Ranger. That's what I used to do. Just take Winter Ranger with Ice Hunter, so you're getting 1 plus D3 command points per turn, and you literally just spam reroll 1s to save on the Ethereal Stonehorn, and rolling 2 sucks, but there are ways to heal. You got the 5-up after save, and you could survive. Now, here we are in 2021 in AOS 3, and there's no more Ethereal Amulet, but you got Amulet of Destiny, right? 5-up after save. Now, monsters like the Maw Crusher, right? Historically in AOS 2, before Amulet of Destiny, got absolutely wrecked by mortal wounds, right? And you also could not save stack. That wasn't a thing. So you'd be on like 3s rerolling 1s, but if they had rend, you get wrecked, and if they had mortal wounds, you get wrecked. So the Maw Crusher was more of like a glass cannon smashy kind of thing. And now you can just put Amulet of Destiny on him, got more access to heal and save stacking, and now suddenly you've got something that's just better than a Stonehorn. Like, you look at it, you know, top to down, and it's just better. And the reason that it's better is because the idea of its War Scroll doesn't take into account Amulet of Destiny, right? So I'm looking at this Stonehorn, right? Frostlord and Stonehorn has some clear strengths, right? On paper, which is 3-up armor save, 5-up after save, but some clear weaknesses. Low wound count and unreliable damage. Okay, those are its 2 main weaknesses. Okay, amongst, you know, not having fly is also a weakness, but those are the 2 main things. Okay, now you look at other monsters in the game that have fly and have a 3-up save and have reliable damage. Okay, i.e. Maw Crusher. If you take Amulet of Destiny on them, you have something that is infinitely better than a Stonehorn. Now, even in Ogres, if you take Amulet of Destiny on a Thunder Tusk, it is better than a Stonehorn. Okay. If you don't believe me, play with that thing, the Frostlord and Thunder Tusk. That thing in AOS 3 is way better than a Frostlord and Stonehorn, okay? Because the damage is not that different, because the Frostlord and Stonehorn's damage is mostly different in terms of the Thunder Tusk on the mount, right? It's entirely the mount damage that's different, aside from the mount traits, right? So it's entirely the mount damage, which is the horns, right? Force to hit, and brackets horribly, and the hooves. D6 attacks. So, incredibly unreliable. Whereas the Thunder Tusk damage is 4 attacks, 3s, 2s, the wound brackets, but 3s, 2s, neg 1 D3 damage, right? That's not a good profile, but at least it's kind of reliable. And the Thunder Tusk is cheaper than a Frostlord and Stonehorn, and it's more survivable than a Frostlord and Stonehorn, because you get -1 to hit on its War Scroll, and also you get mount trait, which reduces rend by 1 in combat, right? So, incredibly easy to save stack on that thing. Obviously weak to raw, like every monster in MAWTRIBES, but that's where we're at, okay? So, Stonehorn sucks. Now, where are Yetis at, okay? So, as you guys know, I was playing Yetis a lot in AOS 2, and I did go 5-1 in a tournament at the start of AOS 3. So that was really good with Yetis. I thought that was a good result for the time. And then I played another tournament and went 2-3. And the reason why I went 2-3 in that tournament, the list was stronger in the second tournament, but the main thing is that people learn how to play AOS 3. And that is what I have found in AOS 3, is that I have not been able to run off-meta armies once people actually learn how to play the game. Like, it's really hard, because the armies that are at the top are so easy to just completely blow your opponent off the board with, that it's hard for you to play some like janky playstyle. And the game has become so central. It's almost become like a ball game, like soccer, right? So you're kicking the ball around in the middle, and all the action just surrounds that ball, and it's almost like you've got a game camera focused on the ball. That's what AOS 3 feels like to me, whereas AOS 2 was more like, what game would it be like? It was like playing air hockey with, like, you know, 4, I don't know what they're called, pucks. No, they're not called pucks. You know, the thing you hit the puck with, right? It's playing air hockey with like 4 of those, right? That's what it was like playing AOS 2. And both you and your opponent were just trying to, like, you know, manipulate the board, really. But AOS 3 feels very much like, you know, using army mechanics to achieve battle tactics and blow your opponent off the board. That's what it feels like to me. So, how do Ogres play in that? Okay, so I was playing Yetis, very much board control strategy. Now, they're great against, it looks like Unleash Hell on paper, because you got the 6-inch pile in, but the thing is with Unleash Hell, right, You kind of just want a cheap thrower unit to just tank the Unleash Hell. So like, you know, 3 Fellbats. Ogres do have one solution, which is Hrothgorn's Man-Trappers, but it's like paying 180 points to ignore 1 Unleash Hell and get Savage Spearhead, which looks okay on paper, but compared to other armies that can just do both of those things, it's not good. And, you know, this is the common theme, I think, where Ogres are at. We do all of these things, sounds great on paper, but if you look at other armies, they can just do the same thing better, okay? So Yeti's, the 6-inch pile-in looks good, but you would rather just have a cheap throwaway unit with the same profile. That was a bit cheaper and didn't have 6-inch pile-in, I think, in this current state of the game. What about, okay, the Always Strikes First ability, right? So those that don't know, in Winterbite, you get an Always Strikes First aura for the Yetis, and that was really strong in AOS 2. But where are we at now? Okay, so the problem is that you can still use +1 save when I go first with the Yetis. So let's say I go first with the Yetis. Your opponent can use +1 save, and if they've charged you with something big, that means that like your, you know, 3 units of 3 Yetis you're going to hit them with, right? Just don't really do anything. Like, I found myself in so many situations with it where it was 6 units of 3 Yetis I had in my army that I was like, well, I could spend the command ability to Always Strikes First with the Yetis, but like, what am I gonna do? Like, he's just gonna get +1 save and then just ignore my Ren, because I'm Ren 1, and if he's on a 3-up save, possibly re-rolling ones if he's one of those armies with the loopholes, right? Like, Nagash comes in, you want to go first, and it's like, okay, he's got Mystic Shield up, he can spend a command point for +1 save. He's going to be on 2s re-rolling 1s with the Yetis, so 1 of 36 of the attacks going to go through, which means none of them, because I don't have 36 attacks, okay? So there's no point in spending the command point. So it's like it's an entirely pointless ability, I have come to realize. So the Yetis have gone down in stock as well. Now, the other issue with them is their minus to hit stacking doesn't work anymore. Like, the way the math on minus to hit stacking used to work, right? Not only could you go to -2, and you can't now, there were more re-rolls in the game. So if you had -1 to hit, and you were playing against KO, for example, let's compare the stats on, okay, 3s re-rolling versus 4s re-rolling. Right, 4s re-rolling is 75% hits, and 3s re-rolling is, you know, only 1 in 9 of those will miss, right? So it's like, is it like 88% or something? Right, so you've reduced it by 13%. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then 2s to 3s is like even, you know, more like 2s re-rolling, you're hitting everything, 3s re-rolling, you're not. And then 4s to 5s is like, it's a whole different world. It's like, if you're hitting on 4s and you get -1 hit, right, you'd be 75% normally, and then you go on to, you know, 1 in 3 plus a 1/3 times 2 3s. So what's that? 2 out of 9 plus 5 out of 9, right? So a little bit above 40, a little bit above 50%, right? So again, you're reducing it by like 20% with one -1 to hit now, right? Now like 1/6 is not as good as that. So if you get -1 to hit and your opponent doesn't have any rerolls, aside from the fact that they can spend a command point to nullify your -1 to hit, the actual effect of the -1 to hit is just not as big in a game that doesn't have any rerolls in it, for the most part. Slaves of Darkness accepted, okay? So, -1 to hit defensive thing doesn't do anything, really. The command ability doesn't do anything, really. The 6-inch pile-in barely does anything. So, Yetis don't really do anything either. So then, what about the rest of the army, okay? Now, Noblars are good. You know, 20, 25 mil base models. Pretty good. But you just don't find anything that you can really build an army out of. I think, you know, I've seen a lot of people cling to the Stonehorn build, but it's like, if you're doing that, then why don't you just play Gargants? Like, it's just a better version of the same thing, like the Monster Mash. Or you could play Seraphon, which is way better. So, you know, to cut a long story short, I just feel like Ogres are in a position in 2021, in December, where we just do everything worse than a lot of other armies. And that's how I feel at the moment. Now, I put them on the shelf, and I've been playing mainly Soulblight Gravelords and Big War. I've been playing Nagash because it's like, man, if you've never played Nagash before, just go and do that before he gets nerfed because it's the funnest thing in the world. Awful for your opponent, but it's fun. And Big Wire, I think, is just like Ogres on crack. It's like everything is just mega broken compared to Ogres. Like the Wergog with the 4-up ward and the the Wergog mask, and then you got the Auric Morboss on Maw-Crusher, stuff like that. So what would I like to see in the fact? I want to see Ogres come up to the level of those armies, or those armies come down to the level of Ogres, right? Now, I don't know if nerfing Amulet of Destiny is the best way to deal with the current situation we find ourselves in, but if you're not going to nerf Amulet of Destiny, then units that have a 5-up ward, okay, need some points reductions. That sounds ridiculous, but as we've seen with the new Nurgle book, like, the points cost that a Great Unclean One pays for having a 5-up ward is absurd when you could just put an Amulet of Destiny on him. Like, he might be worth 380 points or something, and he's 495, right? So you're paying like probably 115 points to have a 5-up ward, and you could just have the 115 points and stick an Amulet of Destiny on him, and not have your other artifact. And you would do that every time. Like, someone goes, hey, do you want 115 points, or would you like a 5-up ward? And you go, I'll have the 115 points, and I'll just get my mate to give me his Amulet of Destiny. That's where we're at. Now, yeah, that's where we're at. That's what I think Ogres need, is we need some points adjustments, mainly. War score rewrites would be fucking brilliant, but that's not going to happen. I would like to see Stonehorns get cheaper. That's going to blow everyone's mind. Stonehorns need to be cheaper. Mournfang need to be way cheaper, okay? Like, compare them to Gore Ranchers, it's like, what are we even talking about? Iron Guts need to be way cheaper. 16 wounds at a 4-up save for 245 points is not acceptable. I don't care how good they are in combat. I mean, I love them. Obviously, it's my name, but it's not acceptable at that points value. Gluttons are even worse. Like, 24 wounds at a 5-up save for 260 points is not good. And add to that, they don't actually do good damage for that points either. So, like, people think about, 18 Gluttons. Like, for that points value, like, anything in the game is better than 18 Gluttons, okay? Like, it looks great on paper, but it's probably like 300 points overpriced. Like, 16 Gluttons for like 550 points, I feel like would be fair. I don't think it's, I don't think that's unfair. So, like, I think Gluttons coming down 50 points would be fine. I don't think that would be egregious. I don't think the shooting units are that bad. Like, I don't think the Scrap Launcher and the Iron Blaster really need to come down that much. Like, probably the Scrap Launcher needs to come down 20, and the Iron Blaster the same, but I actually don't think they're, like, the worst thing in the world, which is why you see Underguts doing okay, for some reason. And what else have I missed? Yeah, I think Noblars probably need to go up 10 points. That's fair enough, at least. Maybe 20 points even. Especially if you can compare them to, like, a lot of the other stuff that's come out recently. It's just 20 bodies for 120 points is just so good. Especially since they have their own champion. Yeah, and that's where I'm at. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year if you celebrate both those things, and let's look forward to an Ogre Fac. Yay.